Thank you, Lascian Corla. I'd like to ask the Minister what his views and the Department views are on the real concerns for viability under core funding within parts of the early childhood care and education sector. And if you could make a statement, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. The new core funding system that was announced in Budget 2022 amounts to 221 million in a full year costs, and of that 173 million represents new investment. From the work we've done on this, we see no evidence that suggests that services will face viability issues as a result of this significant increase in investment. But I am engaging with representative groups to understand their concerns, and I continue to do that. The vast majority of services, full day, part-time and sessional services, will see a substantial increase in funding under the new scheme. Now, there are a small percentage of services, about 1%, that won't see an increase in funding under core funding. And these services, and they are primarily HA sessional services who are already on the higher capitation rate, they are currently in receipt of some of the highest levels of public funding, at least €110 per hour of provision, with 2 adults required to be working with children under the ratios there. In addition to a funding guarantee that ensures no services will receive less under core funding, a new strand of the Sustainability Fund is being designed to provide an extra safety net for providers who have financial difficulties. And this new Sustainability Fund, it will be open to private providers as well as to community providers as well. Core funding is distributed in a fair and reasonable manner, and it's related to services costs of delivery. And core funding intentionally addresses some of the existing disparities in funding approaches across HA and also non-HA provision. And the significantly increased investment through core funding provides a mechanism to control parental fees and improve pay and conditions for staff through supporting the drawing up of the Employment Regulation Order. This will ensure that the early years educators and staff are paid properly for the really important work that they do. So every year a number of services close and open, and the current data on service closures and opening are not markedly different to the trend in previous years. And services close for a wide range of issues, retirements, etc. Only a small minority close due to sustainability issues. And just to conclude, the new funding model will benefit providers by improving the level and stability of funding, as well as delivering significant improvements for children, parents and staff.
Thank you, Minister, and a lot of that sounds very positive, but often the headline figures are used as indicators of government support for particular areas, but the true picture can only be seen when that breakdown of the funding is examined in greater detail by those who will be able to avail of it or not, as the case may be. And I think the headline figures do not in this case account for the variety of services being funded, and nor do they show any shortcomings in funding for any particular services. So I'd like to commend the work of Elaine Dunn, the chairperson of the Federation for Early Childhood Providers, and many others for their tireless work in informing us as people. My daughter's 27, so at this point in time, Minister, I don't have a need for the service, but I do see how important it is. And the sector itself and people like Elaine Dunn, who have a depth of knowledge, are worth listening to and should at all cost be met by the department to understand their woes. And I think they've highlighted some shortcomings in service provisions when it comes to comparing full daycare and non-full daycare. And correspondence which have been provided with from the Federation gets to the heart of the matter. It's acknowledged that full daycare have higher staff ratios, but we also, you've got this correspondence also, Minister, so you might just reiterate.
Thanks. Well, I've met with the Federation, and we had a lengthy meeting, both myself and officials, with representatives from the Federation, and we're continuing to engage with them. They've submitted a detailed document to us. We don't agree with all elements of it, and we're working through it. But in terms of core funding is about covering the costs of delivery, and one of the key elements here is that the sessional services, by their nature, have a shorter operating day, they have a shorter number of hours per week, so their costs of delivery are different to full-day centre services. And that's why when you do a kind of a raw analysis of how much will a full-day centre, and we're not just talking about big ones, we're talking about small community but full-day centres as well, they are by their nature going to get more from core funding because they are open more. They're open, 48, 49 weeks a year as opposed to 30, 38. They're open 40 hours a week compared to 30. So that's where that raw difference comes from. But in terms of operating costs, we believe we are meeting the operating costs of providers.
Something that they would disagree with, and that's why I would encourage a minister to certainly keep talking with them. I mean, they have a range of optional extras that they've put to you that can be implemented, but I think you'll find that most of what parents want is quality first and availability second, or both in tandem. Absolutely. But I think the reality of the costs in childcare, there are many hidden costs that nobody has accounted for and that even parents don't consider. The training and education that now goes into child carers, everything from insurance to the retention of staff. Not just, that there are staffing shortages, but the retention of staff. And it primarily comes down to much of what Ms Dunn says is not being recognised as cost. And I think core funding, as I said, it's there as a headline figure. But when you delve into it, the problems surface. And we can only understand it through the providers. We can only remedy it through the providers, just like we can only build houses with developers.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is this is from September of this year will be the first year of core funding, and really ask services, this is a very significant investment. Let's give this a go. Let's work through this so we can actually, and there will be, it'll be addressed and refined over the years. But I genuinely believe this is the way to go, and I believe it will deliver the quality that you spoke about, Deputy, because one of the greatest threats to quality is the staff leaving the sector, and the staff are leaving the sector because they're not sufficiently paid, and everybody recognises that, and that is what the centre of core funding is about. Of the allocation, 132 million is dedicated directly to supporting services, pay staff extra, assuming that this ERO, this employment regulation order that's being negotiated at the moment, is agreed. They've negotiated a base rate, €13 per hour, a living wage. For the first time, we'll have a living wage for childcare professionals. That's what we're trying to achieve here, and it looks like it's about to be delivered, and I think that's something really positive.
I think I've lost. You've been in twice, I think, have you? I think so. Yeah, over enthusiastic. Okay. Yeah, thanks.